Nathan Hale's pen hovered less than an inch above the signature line when I put my hand over the contract. The wedding band was still playing beyond the glass doors. The music reached us as a muffled pulse beneath the laughter and clinking glasses. Champagne hung sweet and sharp in the air. Under my palm, the edge of the paper pressed into my skin. "Don't sign that," I said. Nathan looked up at me, then toward the 17 other employees seated around the long table. Each place setting held an ivory envelope with a name printed across the front. Several had already been opened. A few contracts carried signatures. My sister's new husband stood at the far end of the table, his smile fixed in place. "No one here has to sign anything tonight," I continued. "This firm was never selected, approved, or endorsed by me or by my company." 8 months later, I remember every face at that table. I hope you're doing well. Stay with me to hear what happened next, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. 8 hours earlier, I had arrived at the Lakeside Hotel alone. I wore a dark blue dress and the pearl earrings Amanda had given me years earlier. My laptop remained locked in the trunk because the sale of my company still had several final closing conditions to clear. The agreement had been signed 3 days earlier, but our announcement was scheduled for 1 minute after midnight. I was not planning to discuss the deal at the wedding. That night was supposed to belong to Amanda. I crossed the circular drive at 4:10 and stopped beneath the hotel awning. Through the glass, white flowers climbed the staircase and candles glowed near the ballroom. A security guard checked a printed list while a coordinator adjusted the ribbon on a welcome sign. My phone vibrated at 4:12. The message came from my mother. "Turn around, you'll embarrass us." I read it twice. 7 words erased the dress fitting I had attended, the gift I had sent, and Amanda's promise that we would put our differences aside for one day. The security guard glanced at me, then at the paper in his hand. His expression told me he had already received instructions. I did not call my mother. I did not ask Amanda why. I did not stand beneath that awning and bargain for a place in my own family. I took a screenshot and sent it to Dana, my chief of staff. "A family issue came up," I wrote. "I'm returning to the transaction suite. Please tell the team I'll be online shortly." Then I walked back toward the parking area. Near the ballroom entrance, a gold-framed sign caught my attention. "Founding Team Appreciation Table." Amanda had invited 18 of TraceGrid's earliest employees. Most had known me before we had a proper office. Amanda had said she wanted to honor the people who helped me build something meaningful. Beneath the sign sat a row of ivory envelopes, each marked with an employee's name. For one moment, I felt grateful. I thought Amanda had finally found a way to include my life without competing with it. I left before anyone saw me. The transaction team had reserved a suite at a business hotel about a mile away. The drive took less than 10 minutes. By 4:30, I had changed into a blazer, opened my laptop, and joined a call with North Star's legal team. A scheduling issue had surfaced. One overseas office wanted to release an internal memo before closing confirmation. I checked the approved communications plan and gave a simple answer. "No early release. We use the agreed timeline, or we wait." The problem was resolved. That was how I handled pressure. I separated what hurt from what required action. My family called that coldness. In business, people called it judgment. The ceremony began without me at 5. The reception started at 6:30. I knew because the hotel's public event page began posting photographs while I reviewed closing documents. At 10:45, North Star confirmed that closing remained on schedule. At 10:58, my phone lit up with Nathan's name. Nathan joined TraceGrid during our first year. He was 61, careful with money, and suspicious of any document that used urgency as a sales technique. I answered immediately. "Are you still at the wedding?" I asked. I stepped into the hallway, he said. Music and voices crowded the background. "Erica, why does your new brother-in-law want us to sign wealth management contracts at your sister's reception?" I sat straighter. "What contract are you talking about?" Nathan sent me 3 photographs. The first showed the ivory envelope I had seen near the ballroom. The second showed a document titled Founders Liquidity Planning Agreement. The third showed a square code printed above the words Erica Selected Program. My photograph appeared beside the TraceGrid logo. "I never selected this," I said. Nathan lowered his voice. "Amanda told the table you arranged it as a thank you gift. Derek said the terms were only available tonight." Another image arrived, It was the seating chart. All 18 founding employees had been placed together. No spouses from outside the company. No college friends. No distant relatives. Just the people most likely to receive life-changing payouts after the sale became public. "What have you signed?" I asked. "I haven't signed anything yet. A few others may have." I opened the agreement and saw a fee schedule, a 12-month commitment, and language authorizing Harbor Ridge Wealth to manage assets after the transaction closed. The announcement was a little more than an hour away. Nathan exhaled into the phone. "Erica, they told us the offer expires at midnight. The deadline was artificial. But the danger was not." I told Nathan not to sign anything and asked him to stay away from the table until I called back. Then I opened the photographs on my laptop and enlarged the first page of the agreement. Across the top, beneath the Harbor Ridge Wealth logo, were 5 words printed in dark blue. Founder-approved liquidity planning program. My name appeared twice on the page. My company's name appeared 4 times. None of it had been authorized. I had seen an earlier version of the idea 3 weeks before the wedding. Derek had invited me to lunch at a restaurant near TraceGrid's Seattle office. Amanda was already seated beside him when I arrived. Her engagement ring caught the light every time she moved her hand, and Derek had arranged 3 leather folders neatly beside his plate. "I know you're protective of your employees," he said after the waiter left. "That's why I think Harbor Ridge could help." He explained that many early TraceGrid employees would soon receive more money than they had ever managed before. They would need help with taxes, investments, retirement planning, and estate decisions. That part was true. Some of our earliest employees had taken lower salaries in exchange for equity. A few had mortgages they wanted to pay off. Others had children entering college or parents who needed long-term care. One employee had already admitted that the thought of receiving a large payout frightened him more than it excited him. Derek slid one of the folders toward me. "We could become the preferred firm for the founding team," he said. "Not mandatory, of course. You would simply introduce us as a trusted option." Amanda smiled, as though the arrangement had already been approved. "It would keep everything personal," she added. "These people know our family. They would feel safer with Derek than with strangers." I opened the folder but did not touch the pen resting inside it. "Send the full proposal to Laura," I said. "She handles compliance review." Derek's smile tightened. "I was hoping we could keep this less formal." "That would be the reason to make it formal." Amanda gave me a familiar look, the one she used whenever she wanted me to soften an answer without changing it. "This is not some random salesman," she said. "He's about to be your brother-in-law." "That does not remove the conflict," I replied. "It creates another one." The proposal reached Laura that afternoon. 2 days later, she called me into her office. Laura had marked the fee schedule with yellow tabs. Harbor Ridge wanted an annual management fee well above what several comparable firms charged. The agreement also allowed clients to be placed in investment products that could generate additional compensation for Derek's company. "The exit terms are not impossible," Laura said. "But they are deliberately inconvenient. Anyone who signs would be locked into a difficult first year." She turned to another page. "There is also language about a referral relationship, but it does not clearly identify who receives the benefit." "Amanda," I said. Laura did not answer immediately, which told me enough. "We asked for clarification," she said. Derek said the family arrangement was still being finalized. Michelle joined us later that day. As chief people officer, she understood the employees better than anyone outside their direct managers. "We should offer independent financial education before the announcement," she said. "Not a preferred advisor. Just neutral guidance about taxes, fees, and pressure tactics." I understood the need, but the deal was still confidential. Even a general program aimed only at early employees could have signaled that a transaction was approaching. "After closing," I said, "we can launch it as soon as the announcement goes out." Michelle leaned back in her chair. "People make poor decisions when they are scared," she warned. "Intelligence does not protect anyone from urgency." She was right, but I still delayed the program. At the time, I considered that a disciplined decision. I was protecting the transaction, the shareholders, and the employees from a damaging leak. What I failed to consider was that silence created its own risk. By giving people no clear guidance, I left an empty space where someone else could present certainty. Laura sent Harbor Ridge a written rejection the following morning. The email was direct. TraceGrid would not designate Harbor Ridge as a preferred firm. Derek was not authorized to contact employees under the company's name. Neither Erica Dalton nor TraceGrid endorsed his services. Any future communication suggesting otherwise would be inaccurate. Amanda called me within an hour. "You embarrassed him," she said. "I rejected a proposal. You made him look dishonest. The disclosure was incomplete." Her voice sharpened. "You always do this. You decide I'm the irresponsible sister, then you make sure everyone else sees me that way." "I never said you were irresponsible." "You don't have to say it. You speak to me like I'm a problem waiting for your lawyers to solve." The accusation landed because it contained enough truth to hurt. I had spent years making decisions quickly. Direct language saved time, reduced confusion, and protected people who depended on me. At home, the same precision could sound like contempt. "My employees are not your client list," I said. Amanda went silent for several seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. "I wanted one chance to bring something valuable into this family. You do not prove your value by selling access to people who trust me. You see? That is exactly what I mean." The call ended without either of us apologizing. 3 weeks later, I sat in the transaction suite with Nathan's photographs filling my screen. I searched my email for Derek's name and found Laura's rejection. The message had been delivered. Derek had replied that he understood and would respect the company's decision. There was no misunderstanding. He knew Harbor Ridge had not been approved. Another photograph arrived from Nathan. This one showed the reception seating chart. The 18 earliest TraceGrid employees had been placed together beneath a gold sign bearing my name. No other company employees were seated near them. No outside advisors were listed. Amanda had gathered the exact people most likely to receive substantial payouts and placed them within arm's reach of Derek's contracts. Nathan sent one final message beneath the photograph. "They chose this table on purpose." Nathan's final photograph removed any possibility that the contracts had appeared at the wedding by accident. I checked the time. It was 11 o'clock. "Keep the original envelope and every page they gave you," I told him. "Do not confront Derek. Do not warn Amanda that you called me." "What about the others?" "I'm handling that now. Stay near the table, but do not sign." I ended the call and started a secure video meeting with Laura, Michelle, and Dana. All three answered within 5 minutes. Laura appeared from her home office with her glasses still in one hand. Michelle joined from the transaction hotel, 2 floors below me. Dana had been monitoring the closing announcement from another suite. I placed Nathan's photographs on the shared screen. "We have 3 priorities," I said. "Stop more signatures, protect the closing, and make no accusation we cannot prove." Dana enlarged the square code printed on the agreement. "Has anyone opened this?" she asked. "Nathan is waiting for instructions." Laura nodded. "Have him use a separate device. We need to see where it leads without entering any personal information." I called Nathan back and guided him through the code. A landing page opened under the heading TraceGrid Founders Liquidity Program. My company logo filled the top corner. A professional photograph of me appeared beside the words selected by our founder. The page thanked early employees for helping me build the company and invited them to secure personal guidance before the public announcement. A countdown clock showed less than an hour remaining. Dana captured the page, including the address and timestamp. "That language makes it look like an official company benefit," she said. "It was never authorized," I replied. Laura was already typing. She sent preservation instructions to our internal legal and technology teams, directing them to retain every message, photograph, link, and communication related to Harbor Ridge. She also drafted a notice ordering Derek's firm to preserve its materials and stop using TraceGrid's name. Before she sent it, I asked the question I could not answer myself. If someone signed, did they transfer their payout? "They did not," Laura said. "This is not a sale of their shares. It is an agreement to manage money after they receive it." She highlighted 2 sections. "The problem is the fee, the 1-year commitment, and the authority they may be giving Harbor Ridge once the accounts are funded. A signature does not mean the money disappears tonight, but it creates a contract that may take time and money to unwind." That distinction mattered. There was still time to protect people, but not time to waste. Michelle pulled up the names from Nathan's seating chart photograph and compared them with the wedding guest information employees had voluntarily shared with her office. She identified all 18 people within minutes. "I can send a confidential alert," she said. "No accusation, no details about the transaction. Just that TraceGrid has not approved any financial advisor and no one needs to sign anything tonight." "Send it from the employee support channel," I said. "Ask them to photograph anything they received and preserve the original." Dana looked at me from her square on the screen. "Should we call Amanda before this reaches the whole table? If she stops Derek quietly, we may avoid a scene." For a moment, I considered it. Amanda was my sister. My mother was inside that ballroom. Calling them would have been the normal family response. But this was no longer a private argument. They were using my name to influence employees during a confidential transaction. If I call Amanda, she gets time to remove the envelopes, change the landing page, and tell 18 people a new version of the story, I said. "We preserve first. We confront after we know what happened." Dana accepted the decision without arguing. She separated the issue from the closing communications plan and notified North Star's counsel that an unauthorized third party was using our name. The message was narrow and factual. There was no reason for a family scandal to jeopardize a transaction that hundreds of people had worked to complete. Replies began reaching Michelle. 2 employees said they had not opened their envelopes. Another thought the meeting had been arranged by me. One asked whether the warning meant the acquisition was in danger. Michelle answered each person carefully. She did not confirm the deal, speculate about Amanda, or instruct anyone how to invest. She repeated one point. No deadline required them to make a financial decision at a wedding. At 11:18, an employee forwarded a voicemail Beverly had left earlier that afternoon. My mother's voice came through the laptop speakers, warm and reassuring. "Erica asked me to make sure the people who helped her in the beginning were protected. Derek understands what is coming, and Amanda arranged everything so you would not have to worry. Please bring identification and sign before midnight. Erica cannot discuss it herself yet." No one in the video meeting spoke when the recording ended. Until that moment, part of me had allowed for the possibility that my mother believed Amanda was arranging a harmless seminar. The voicemail ended that excuse. Beverly had used my name, claimed direct instructions, and added urgency she knew I could not publicly contradict before closing. Laura sent the formal notice. Michelle completed the first round of employee warnings. Dana confirmed that the closing remained on schedule and that the public announcement had not been altered. At 11:28, I closed my laptop and picked up my phone. "I'm going back," I said. Laura and Michelle agreed to meet me downstairs. I did not call Amanda. I did not change out of the blue dress my family had rejected earlier that evening. I put my laptop in its case and headed for the elevator. The doors had almost closed when Michelle's phone vibrated. She read the message once, then looked at me. 7 people already signed. The elevator doors opened into the lobby, and Michelle kept reading the messages arriving from the reception. 7 people had signed. 4 others had opened the agreement but stopped after receiving her warning. The remaining employees had either left the table or had not checked their phones. Laura and I walked beside her toward the parking garage, while Nathan stayed on the line. "Tell me exactly how this was presented," I said. "Start with when the envelopes appeared." Nathan lowered his voice. The wedding band was playing again behind him, but he had moved far enough into the hallway that I could hear him clearly. "The envelopes weren't on the table during dinner," he said. "The staff brought them out after the cake was cut." Derek stood up and called it a gift for the founding team. "What did Amanda say?" "She said we were the people who made Erica Dalton possible." I tightened my grip around my laptop case. Nathan continued. "Amanda had thanked the 18 employees for believing in me before anyone else did. She said my family wanted to make sure the people who helped create TraceGrid would be protected after the company entered its next chapter." Then Derek explained the deadline. Anyone who signed before midnight would receive a waived planning fee and priority access to what he called the Dalton Family Liquidity Team. He assured them the documents only reserved a place and that they could discuss investment decisions later. The contract said otherwise. "Did anyone introduce Derek as a representative of TraceGrid?" Laura asked. "Amanda said Erica trusted him with the family's future," Nathan replied. "Beverly said the program was too sensitive for Erica to discuss before the announcement. They had used the confidentiality of the sale as proof of their lie. Every time I had refused to discuss the transaction, I had made their story sound more convincing." Michelle stopped beside the car and studied the seating chart photograph again. These names were not taken from the human resources system, she said. How can you tell? I asked. Because 3 people on this list left TraceGrid years ago, and 2 employees who joined just as early were not invited. This was built from personal memory, not company records. She pointed to the names one at a time. Most had attended our early company picnics, back when TraceGrid had fewer than 50 employees. Beverly had insisted on hosting one at a public park because she said a growing company should still feel like a family. She collected home addresses for holiday cards and kept photographs labeled with names. Amanda had helped organize 2 anniversary dinners. She knew who had joined early, whose children were approaching college, and which employees spoke openly about retirement. They did not need to hack a database. My family had spent years standing beside me at ordinary events, learning which people trusted them. Nathan sent another photograph. It showed the ballroom from the edge of the founding team table. Beyond the flowers and candles, a temporary backdrop had been installed near the entrance. A local business publication's logo appeared beside the wedding monogram. Dana called before we entered the car. I found the press invitation, she said. Amanda contacted 2 local business reporters last week. She promised an exclusive family reaction to a major announcement involving TraceGrid. She knew the release time, I said. She knew it would happen around midnight. She also invited a small camera crew to record material for what she called a family legacy feature. The reporters had not followed breaking news to the wedding. Amanda had placed them there in advance. She had arranged the table, gathered the employees, prepared the contracts, and invited cameras to capture the moment my company's sale became public. Once the announcement appeared, the signed agreements would look like part of an official celebration. My silence would become approval. My absence would keep me from contradicting them. Laura took the passenger seat while Michelle sat behind me. I started the car at 11:28. The venue was only about a mile away, but the streets around downtown Bellevue curved through hotel entrances, office buildings, and late-night traffic leaving the restaurants. The drive was short enough that I could still picture the ballroom lights from earlier. Dana remained on speaker. I can issue the external statement now, she said. It will say Harbor Ridge has never been selected by TraceGrid and has no authority to use your name. Prepare it, but hold until we are inside, I said. I want the employees warned before the press turns this into a spectacle. Laura looked toward me. You do not have to enter the reception personally. Michelle and I can handle the employees while security preserves the materials. I understood why she offered. My family had already decided that my presence was a threat to Amanda's wedding. Walking back into the ballroom would let them claim I had come for revenge. If this were only about my name, I would stay away, I said. 7 people signed because they believed I sent them there. They need to hear from me that I did not. Michelle leaned forward slightly. You know Amanda will make this about the wedding. She can call it whatever she wants. I am going back for the signatures, not for a seat. My blue dress was still visible beneath my blazer. I had considered changing after leaving the venue, but the closing calls had begun almost immediately. Now I was returning in the same clothes my mother had decided would embarrass them. At 11:37, we pulled beneath the hotel awning. The flower arrangements still framed the entrance. Through the glass, guests moved beneath warm lights, while a camera operator adjusted equipment near the ballroom doors. The same security guard who had watched me leave stepped forward. His face changed when he recognized me, but he did not move aside. I'm sorry, Miss Dalton, he said. I have instructions not to admit you. Laura opened her folder and introduced herself as TraceGrid's general counsel. She explained that unauthorized financial agreements were being distributed inside the venue using our company's name and that the event manager needed to speak with us immediately. The guard contacted his supervisor. While we waited, Laura's phone vibrated with a message from Dana. She opened the attached photograph and turned the screen toward me. It was a printed instruction placed inside the security folder. Do not admit Erica Dalton under any circumstances. The instruction in the security folder confirmed that my exclusion had been planned before I ever reached the venue. The event manager arrived less than 2 minutes later. Laura showed her the unauthorized landing page, the formal notice sent to Harbor Ridge, and photographs of the agreements being distributed inside the ballroom. We are not asking you to remove the wedding party, Laura said. We need access to the employees who were approached under our client's name. The manager read the documents, then looked toward the ballroom. If financial solicitations are happening inside the event, that violates the venue agreement, she said. I'll escort you in. The security guard stepped aside. I entered the hotel at 11:43 with Laura and Michelle beside me. We did not go through the main ballroom. The manager led us along a service corridor that opened near the smaller glass-walled room where the founding team table had been moved after dinner. Through the doors, Derek stood beside a portable screen displaying the Harbor Ridge landing page. Amanda was speaking to a couple near the center of the table, one hand resting on the back of a chair as though she were hosting a private celebration. Ivory envelopes covered the table. Nathan saw me first. He straightened, and the sudden change in his posture drew the attention of the people around him. Amanda followed his gaze toward the door. Her smile disappeared. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I did not answer her. I walked to Nathan and placed my hand over the agreement in front of him. "Don't sign that," I said. The room went quiet enough for the music from the ballroom to fill the space between us. Derek recovered first. "Erica, this is a private planning session," he said. "You're interrupting your sister's reception. This session is using my name, my photograph, and my company's logo." He glanced toward Laura. There has clearly been a misunderstanding. Laura introduced herself and handed him the formal notice. "No misunderstanding exists," she said. "Your firm received written confirmation 3 weeks ago that TraceGrid did not approve this program." Michelle addressed the employees. "TraceGrid has not selected Harbor Ridge Wealth or any other financial advisor. No company benefit requires a signature tonight. Anyone who signed will receive independent help reviewing what they were given." Several people immediately reached for their envelopes. One employee pushed her contract across the table as though she no longer wanted it near her. Another checked the signature page he had completed and asked whether he had already committed his payout. Laura answered without creating false reassurance. "You have not transferred company shares through this agreement. We will review the terms and available options with you. Please keep every page and do not alter anything." Derek's face tightened. "These are sophisticated adults," he said. "They chose to sign after receiving full explanations." Nathan lifted the fee schedule. "You told us this only reserved a consultation." "It does." "Then why does it authorize account management after funding?" Derek looked toward Amanda. She stepped between us, her voice low and furious. "You could have called me. You told security not to admit me under any circumstances. That was Mom's decision." Beverly appeared in the doorway before I could answer. My father followed several steps behind her. His bow tie loosened and confusion already spreading across his face. My mother looked from me to the employees gathering their documents. "You were told to leave," she said. "I did leave. Then Nathan showed me what you were asking my employees to sign." "We were helping them," Beverly replied. "You were too busy with your deal to think about what would happen to these people. They were offered one firm, one set of fees, and one deadline at my sister's wedding." Amanda folded her arms. Derek was giving them access to something valuable. Then why did he need my name to sell it? She did not answer. At 11:50, Michelle sent a second message to all 18 employees, confirming that no immediate decision was required. The remaining unsigned agreements stayed on the table. Derek moved toward the screen and shut down the presentation, but the landing page had already been preserved. Laura asked the event manager to prevent any documents from being removed until the employees had collected their own copies. Amanda stared at me as though I had walked into the room carrying a weapon instead of a lawyer. "You came back just to ruin my reception." "No," I said. "I came back because you turned my employees into wedding favors." A camera flash burst from the hallway. Amanda turned sharply. The reporters she had invited were gathering near the ballroom entrance. Their phones had begun receiving the scheduled announcement, and the camera crew was already moving into position. At 12:01, TraceGrid's sale to North Star Systems became public. Messages flooded my phone. The ballroom erupted in applause as someone announced the $1.2 billion figure over the microphone. My mother's anger transformed almost instantly. She smoothed the front of her dress, stepped toward the waiting cameras, and smiled. "We always knew Erica would succeed," she said. Our entire family helped her believe in herself. One reporter glanced at his phone, then raised a printed screenshot. "Mrs. Dalton, did you send your daughter this message earlier tonight?" My mother's smile froze as he read the words aloud. "Turn around, you'll embarrass us." Amanda looked from the reporter to me and whispered, "Who gave them that?" "I did," I said. Amanda stared at me as if the answer had struck her harder than the message itself. The reporter shifted his attention from my mother to me. You authorized the release of the screenshot? After my family publicly claimed they had always supported me, I said. My communications director provided a factual response. Beverly stepped toward the cameras before anyone could ask another question. That message has been taken out of context, she said. Erica was under enormous pressure. We were trying to protect Amanda's wedding from becoming a corporate event. The irony settled over the reception. Behind my mother stood a press backdrop she had helped arrange. Beyond it, Derek's presentation screen still displayed the remains of a program built around my company's sale. A second reporter looked toward the glass room, where the employees were gathering their contracts. Was the financial program also meant to protect the wedding? Beverly's smile tightened. That was Derek's area. We trusted him. Derek moved closer, his face flushed beneath the ballroom lights. I was told Erica had approved the introductions, he said. Amanda assured me the family had discussed it. Amanda turned toward him. You reviewed every agreement. I reviewed what you brought me. You created the fee structure, she snapped. You were the one who said they had to sign before TraceGrid brought in independent advisors. The room changed. Guests who had been whispering became still. One of Derek's relatives lowered his champagne glass. A camera operator shifted position to keep both Amanda and Derek in the frame. Derek stared at her. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said. You told me the opportunity disappeared once Erica gave them real options. His father stepped away from the head table and called Derek's name in warning. Amanda seemed to hear him too late. Her breathing had quickened, and the careful expression she had worn all evening was gone. Beverly reached for her arm. Stop talking. Amanda pulled away. You told me to make this happen. I told you to help your husband, my mother replied. I did not tell you to deceive anyone. Amanda gave a sharp, disbelieving laugh. You called them yourself. Beverly looked toward the cameras, then back at her daughter. Because you gave me the list and told me what to say. You knew exactly what you were saying. You told them Erica had personally asked you to protect them. I repeated the explanation you gave me. My father finally stepped forward. Gordon Dalton had spent most of my childhood trying to end conflict by lowering his voice and asking everyone to behave. That night, he looked from the contracts to my mother as though he had entered a conversation that had begun months before without him. You told me this was a free seminar, he said. Beverly did not answer. He moved closer. Were you being paid? Amanda looked at my mother, and something in her expression hardened. She was getting more than I was. The silence that followed was not dramatic or theatrical. It was the silence of people realizing they had just heard something that could not be pulled back. Beverly's face lost its color. Amanda, you have no idea what you're talking about. I saw you meeting with Derek without me. You negotiated your own arrangement. Derek's father grabbed his son by the shoulder and pulled him away from the cameras. Two members of the wedding party moved toward Amanda, but she shook them off. Several guests turned their phones face down. Others quietly left the edge of the ballroom. No one applauded my company's sale anymore. Laura stepped close to me. Everything they say may help us determine what to preserve, she whispered. But we still need the documents and payment records. This argument is not enough by itself. I nodded. That distinction mattered. I had not returned to collect angry admissions for entertainment. I had returned because employees had signed contracts under my name. Amanda looked across the room at me. This is what you wanted, she said. You came back just to ruin my reception. I came back because you turned my employees into wedding favors. Her face twisted. You could have handled it privately. You contacted them privately. You used my name privately. Then you invited cameras to celebrate it publicly. I turned away before the argument could become another performance. Michelle had gathered the 18 employees near the hallway. Some held unopened envelopes. Others carried completed agreements. A few looked embarrassed, although none of the shame belonged to them. Please do not answer questions from the press tonight, I told them. Keep every page you received. Michelle and Laura will arrange private reviews first thing tomorrow. No one needs to make another decision before speaking with an independent advisor. Nathan stood near the door. I should have called sooner, he said. You called before midnight. That gave us a chance. I asked the event manager to provide a private exit so the employees would not have to walk through the reporters. Michelle began organizing rides for anyone who wanted to leave. Behind us, Amanda and Beverly were still arguing. Derek's family had moved him into a side corridor. My father remained alone beside the head table, staring at the ivory envelopes as though he had finally understood what they contained. Laura checked her phone while we walked toward the service hallway. Her expression changed. "What happened?" I asked. "Harbor Ridge's system has already processed 7 electronic agreements." I looked back at the employees following us. Stopping the presentation had prevented more signatures. It had not freed the people who had already trusted my name. By 7 the next morning, the wedding photographs had already begun circulating online, but I was not looking at them. I was sitting in a conference room with the 7 employees who had signed Harbor Ridge's agreements. Some joined by video from their hotel rooms. 3 came to the transaction suite in person. Nathan sat beside a woman named Carla, who had worked at TraceGrid since our 2nd year and had signed after Beverly personally assured her the program came from me. Laura placed copies of the agreements on the screen. "These contracts did not transfer your TraceGrid shares," she explained. "They appear to create a future advisory relationship once your proceeds are available. We are reviewing the termination terms, the electronic consent records, and whether the agreements were presented through misleading statements." Carla pressed both hands around a paper cup. "Can you cancel them?" "We may have several ways to challenge or terminate them," Laura said. "I do not want to promise the outcome before we review each signature and the laws that apply." No one liked that answer, but it was honest. One employee admitted he had barely read the fee schedule. Another said Derek told him the document only held a place in the program. Carla kept apologizing for trusting my mother. "You do not owe me an apology," I said. "My name was used to make the offer look safe." I paused before continuing because there was another truth I needed to say. I protected the confidentiality of the sale better than I prepared you for what would happen after it. I knew many of you would face complicated decisions about taxes, debt, retirement, and investing. I planned to offer education after closing because I was afraid an earlier program might expose the transaction. Nathan looked at me across the table. "That does not make you responsible for what they did." "No," I said. "It does mean I left an information gap, and someone used it. I apologized for that gap. I did not apologize for Amanda, Derek, or my mother. Their choices belong to them." By 8:30, Michelle had arranged individual review sessions for all 18 employees. 7 needed contract analysis. The others received confirmation that no TraceGrid deadline required them to select an advisor. I then joined a call with Northstar's integration team and the TraceGrid board. The acquisition had closed successfully. The money, equity conversions, and employee payouts would still follow the schedule established in the transaction documents. Northstar did not want to interfere with anyone's private financial decisions, but it agreed that employees needed neutral information before opportunists reached them again. I proposed a limited program funded through the existing transaction support budget. It would include general tax education, explanations of common advisory fees, questions employees should ask before signing, and instructions for checking whether a professional had disciplinary problems or undisclosed incentives. We would not select one advisor. We would not direct anyone's investments. Employees could choose their own accountants, attorneys, or financial planners after receiving enough information to decide calmly. The board approved the plan that morning. At 9:12, my mother called. I let the first call go to voicemail. She called again, then sent a message asking me to stop Dana from releasing any further statement. When I finally answered, Beverly did not ask about the employees. "You need to say last night was a misunderstanding," she said. "The reporters are making us look like criminals. You told people I personally asked you to make them sign. I was trying to help. You were not authorized to speak for me." Her voice hardened. "You humiliated your own family in front of the whole world. You invited the cameras. I only stopped you from lying to them." She ended the call. Amanda called 10 minutes later. She sounded less angry than she had at the reception. That made me trust her even less. "Derek manipulated the situation," she said. "He told me those agreements were harmless. If you say I was misled, everyone will believe you. You told security not to let me near the employees. I was protecting my reception. You were protecting the signatures." Her breathing changed. One sentence from you could save my marriage. I am not giving you another sentence to use in my name." I ended the call before she could turn fear into another negotiation. My father arrived shortly before noon. Gordon looked as though he had not slept. He sat across from me without removing his coat. "I saw the envelopes before dinner," he said. "Beverly told me they were gifts for your early employees. Did you ask what was inside?" "No." "Did you see Derek meeting with them?" He looked down. "Yes." "And you still did not ask?" "I did not want to create trouble on Amanda's wedding day." "Your silence did not prevent trouble. It gave the lie more time. He did not ask me to forgive him. At least not then. He only said he would provide his phone and answer Laura's questions." That afternoon, Northstar requested a complete chronology. They needed proof that no confidential employee database had been accessed, and that the scheme had remained outside company systems. Our technology team compared the 18 names against human resources access logs. There had been no unauthorized download. Michelle reconstructed the list from old picnic photographs, public professional profiles, anniversary invitations, and Beverly's personal holiday contacts. That discovery made the betrayal feel more intimate. My family had not stolen a spreadsheet. They had remembered who trusted them. Just before 6, Laura came into my office carrying her laptop. "The e-sign records include hidden metadata," she said. "There is a linked document that was not shown to the employees." She turned the screen toward me. The file was titled Founder Relations Equity Schedule. The beneficiary was not Derek. It was not my mother. It was Amanda. The file on Laura's screen was not a wedding document. It was an ownership schedule. Under Amanda's name, Harbor Ridge had promised her 15% of a new client relations subsidiary if she delivered at least $50 million in assets from TraceGrid employees. The threshold explained everything. The 18 invitations, the private table, the midnight deadline, and the pressure to sign before independent advisors became available were not separate bad decisions. They were pieces of one plan. Amanda had not been helping her future husband. She had been buying herself a career with access to people who trusted me. Laura enlarged the document. "The agreement was created 6 weeks before the wedding," she said. "Derek signed it first. Amanda accepted it 4 days later." I read the language twice. If the target was met, Amanda would receive the title Director of Founder Relations, a salary, and equity tied to the value of the accounts she helped bring in. "She told me Derek manipulated her," I said. "The records do not support that." Over the following 2 weeks, we learned how deliberate her role had been. The electronic signature history showed Derek had created the original wealth management agreement. Amanda later added the phrases family endorsed and selected through Erica's inner circle. She also requested that the section describing referral compensation be moved out of the summary page and into a longer disclosure attachment. In one comment beside the draft, she wrote that visible commission language would make the offer feel transactional. The event planner's emails were even clearer. Amanda ordered the ivory envelopes placed after dinner. Once the employees had been served champagne and the formal wedding program was over. She reserved the glass room as a private signing area. She instructed security to keep me away from the founding team table if I arrived unexpectedly. The words "under any circumstances" had been hers. Amanda had not banned me because my presence might embarrass the family. She banned me because one sentence from me would have ended the plan before the first envelope was opened. My mother's role was different, but not smaller. Bank records showed Harbor Ridge had sent Beverly a consulting advance before the wedding. An email described her task as family trust outreach. She had also negotiated an additional bonus for employees over 60 because, in her words, they would be more worried about retirement and more likely to value a mother's reassurance. Amanda had not known about the higher bonus. That explained the argument at the reception. My mother had not merely joined Amanda's plan. She had quietly improved her own position inside it. The records also confirmed that my father received no payment. He was not the mastermind I had briefly feared. He was the man who noticed pieces of the scheme, asked no useful questions, and protected his comfort by calling ignorance neutrality. 2 months after the wedding, a local business publication released its investigation. The article included the unauthorized landing page, the fee structure, the public statements from the reception, and the contradiction between my mother's claim of lifelong support and the message ordering me to turn around. The video of Amanda and Derek blaming each other circulated through the wealth management and event planning industries. Harbor Ridge removed Derek from all accounts connected to TraceGrid, while its partners conducted a broader review. Existing clients began asking whether their own fees and disclosures had been presented honestly. Several requested transfers before the review was complete. Amanda's company, Astor and Pine Events, lost 2 corporate contracts. One client wrote that it could not trust her with private guest information after learning she had turned a wedding list into a sales pipeline. None of those consequences came from a campaign I organized. Dana released only verified statements connected to TraceGrid. I refused invitations to discuss Amanda's marriage or my mother's private finances. The documents spoke loudly enough. Amanda came to my office 3 days after the investigation was published. She had lost weight, and the careful polish she usually wore had been replaced by exhaustion. I did not mistake that for innocence. Laura remained in the room with us. Amanda sat across from my desk and placed her handbag on her lap. "Derek is telling everyone this was my idea," she said. "The records show it was your idea to use the wedding and my family name. He designed the contracts. You designed the access." Her fingers tightened around the handbag strap. "I did not understand how bad the agreements were. You asked him to hide the compensation language. I was trying to make the presentation less confusing. You called the commissions transactional because they revealed the transaction." She looked toward Laura, then back at me. "My marriage is falling apart. Derek's family thinks I trapped him. Mom is telling people she only followed my instructions. I have no one." I did feel something then, but it was not the old reflex to rescue her. It was grief for the sister I had kept hoping she might choose to become. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "One statement. Say Derek manipulated me. Say I believed you had approved the program but could not confirm it before closing. That would be false. It would give me a chance to survive this. One sentence from me built your entire plan," I said. "You're never using my name again." Amanda's eyes filled, but she did not cry. She stood, took her handbag, and paused at the door. "You chose employees over your own sister. I chose the people you targeted over the lie you wanted me to tell." After she left, Laura waited until the door closed before opening another file. Mediation had been scheduled for 3 weeks later. Harbor Ridge, Amanda, my parents, and the affected employees would all be represented. The final issue the family wanted placed on the agenda was not an apology. They wanted me to use my personal money to protect my parents' house from any restitution claim. 3 weeks later, I sat across from my family in a mediation room that smelled faintly of coffee and printer toner. Harbor Ridge occupied one side of the table. Derek sat between 2 attorneys and a representative from the firm's remaining partners. Amanda sat beside him, but there was enough space between their chairs to make the state of their marriage obvious. My parents sat together at the other end. Beverly kept one hand on a leather folder. Gordon stared at the settlement figures in front of him. I attended with Laura because my name and company had been used to create the program. I was not seeking damages for myself. The 7 employees who had signed were represented separately. Their priority was simple: end the agreements without losing money or control over their future assets. The mediator began by making one point clear. This is not a criminal trial, and no one is being asked to admit criminal liability today. We are here to resolve the contracts, fees, reimbursement claims, and use of Miss Dalton's name. Derek's attorney nodded as though that distinction helped him. It did not erase the documents. Harbor Ridge's compliance review had concluded that the program had not met the firm's own standards. The landing page falsely implied TraceGrid endorsement. The referral compensation had not been displayed clearly. The deadline created pressure around an event the employees believed was connected to their employer. 5 of the 7 agreements could be terminated before any employee assets entered Harbor Ridge accounts. The remaining 2 were more complicated. Their contracts included setup costs and early termination provisions that Harbor Ridge initially tried to enforce. Laura placed the rejection email from 3 weeks before the wedding on the table. "Your firm knew it had no authorization to approach TraceGrid employees as a founder-approved program," she said. "Any claim for fees must be considered in that context." The representative from Harbor Ridge asked for a private conference with Derek's attorneys. When they returned, the firm agreed to release all 7 employees from the contracts. It also agreed to cover the 2 disputed termination amounts and contribute to the independent review costs the employees had incurred. The money would go to the employees and their advisors. I received nothing. Derek shifted in his chair when the mediator moved to the internal consequences. Harbor Ridge's partners had already removed him from day-to-day control. Under their operating agreement, he would be required to sell most of his ownership interest back to the firm. The price would be reduced by the cost of client refunds, review expenses, and any additional settlements tied to his conduct. Several existing clients had already transferred their accounts elsewhere. The regulatory review remained open. No one promised that Derek would lose his license, and no one announced charges or an arrest. The final professional consequences would depend on records, disclosures, and decisions made by the proper agencies. Still, the result was clear. The company Derek had planned to expand with TraceGrid money no longer trusted him to run it. His attorney tried to describe the program as an isolated lapse in judgment. Derek looked toward Amanda. "I relied on representations from the Dalton family," he said. Amanda turned in her chair. "You signed the agreements. You guaranteed Erica's approval. I told you she would never approve it formally." The mediator raised a hand before the argument could grow. "We are not repeating the wedding reception here." Amanda looked away, but Derek's expression told me the accusation would continue as soon as they left the room. Her promised equity had already been canceled. There was no founder relations subsidiary, no executive title, and no client base for her to manage. Astor and Pine Events had lost several more contracts after the investigation. Vendors still worked with Amanda, but the luxury clients she had built her image around no longer trusted her with private guest lists or confidential schedules. Her marriage had not ended yet. She and Derek were living separately, while their attorneys argued over debts, business representations, and whether either had concealed financial obligations before the wedding. My mother's consulting advance appeared next on the settlement schedule. Beverly had received enough money to make her claim of innocent confusion impossible. She agreed to repay the advance and contribute to the employees' review costs. She had already resigned from 2 community boards. One organization had asked her to leave after hearing the voicemail in which she claimed, "I personally wanted the employees to sign. My parents did not have enough liquid cash to cover everything without selling assets." Their attorney proposed selling the lake cottage, a second vehicle, and several investments. Those funds would satisfy the repayment obligations without touching their primary home. Beverly reacted as though the cottage were the only roof she had ever owned. "That property has been in our family for 12 years, she said. "It is not your primary residence," the mediator replied. "The settlement does not require you to become homeless." My mother looked at me. "You could resolve this with one transfer." I did not respond. Gordon finally raised his head. "There is something I need to say." His voice was quieter than everyone else's, but the room settled. "Amanda told me the program would make Derek's family respect her," he said. "She said she needed to bring something valuable into the marriage." Amanda stared at him. "You knew that?" I asked. "I knew she wanted access to the employees. I did not know the fees or the payments to Beverly. But you knew it was about earning a place in Derek's company." "Yes. Why didn't you ask whether I approved?" His eyes dropped to the table. "Because I thought if I asked, I would have to stop it, and stopping it would have caused a fight before the wedding." The answer was more honest than anything he had given me before. He had not been neutral. He had chosen the version of events that required the least courage from him. "I kept telling myself I was staying out of it," he said. "I understand now that I was helping it happen." I did not forgive him in that room. I also did not interrupt him or reduce his confession to something easier for either of us. The final proposal was placed in front of me. My parents' attorney wanted me to contribute enough personal money to preserve both the primary home and the lake cottage. In exchange, Beverly and Gordon would issue a private apology, stop using my name, and accept limited communication through counsel. The apology would remain confidential. The employees' reimbursements would still be paid, but part of my money would replace what my parents otherwise had to sell. Laura leaned toward me. "You are not required to sign this." I already knew that. The question was not whether I could afford it. The sale had made the amount small compared with what I now owned. The question was whether paying would protect my parents' home or simply purchase another escape from consequences. During a break, I stood near the window while the attorneys reviewed the language. Amanda approached without Derek. Her face looked tired, but her voice still carried the same expectation she had brought to my office. "You can keep Mom from losing everything," she said. "She is not losing everything. She is losing the cottage, her boards, her reputation, and probably her marriage. Those are not mine to replace." Amanda glanced at the agreement in my hand. "Are you really going to let Mom lose everything?" I returned to the table, uncapped the pen, and placed its tip above the signature line. I held the pen above the signature line long enough for Amanda to believe I was about to save them. Then I set it down. "I'm not signing this." My mother's attorney leaned forward. "Miss Dalton, the proposed contribution would resolve the remaining family claims without affecting the employee's recovery." "I understand the proposal." Beverly stared at me from across the table. "You can afford it. That is not the same as owing it." Amanda shook her head. "You would not even notice the money was gone. I would notice what it purchased. The private apology, the confidential settlement, and the preserved cottage would allow my family to tell themselves that the damage had come from an unfair investigation instead of their own choices. I would once again absorb the cost while they kept the symbols of the life they believed they deserved." I slid the unsigned proposal back toward the mediator. "I support the agreement releasing the employees from their contracts and reimbursing their review expenses. I will not contribute personal money to protect assets belonging to the people who created this problem." Beverly's chair scraped against the floor. "After everything we did for you, the sentence might have worked on me years earlier. That day, it sounded empty. You sent me away from the wedding, used my name to pressure my employees, and then claimed credit for my success in front of cameras you invited. Whatever you believe you did for me does not pay this debt." My father closed his eyes. Amanda looked toward him, waiting for him to defend them. He did not. The mediation continued without my contribution. Harbor Ridge released all 7 employees from the agreements and covered the disputed fees. Derek agreed to surrender most of his ownership interest, while the firm completed its internal review. My mother accepted responsibility for returning her consulting advance. My parents kept their primary home. They sold the lake cottage, the second vehicle, and part of their investment portfolio. No one became homeless. They simply lost the assets they had expected me to preserve. When the final papers were ready, Beverly refused to look at me. "You chose strangers over your family," she said. "They were not strangers. They were people you targeted because they trusted me." She walked out without saying goodbye. 8 months have passed since that mediation. The regulatory review of Harbor Ridge did not end with a dramatic arrest or a courtroom confession. It ended the way professional consequences often do, through documents, hearings, restrictions, and the slow disappearance of trust. Derek lost control of the firm. His remaining ownership was bought out at a reduced value after refunds and review costs were deducted. Several longtime clients transferred their accounts. He could still call himself a financial professional, while the final regulatory matters continued, but no serious firm wanted to place him near a founder-led liquidity event again. His marriage to Amanda lasted less than a year. Their separation became permanent once they began arguing over who had concealed what before the wedding. Derek maintained that Amanda had promised access to TraceGrid employees. Amanda insisted he had designed the contracts and understood every risk. Neither version made the other innocent. Astor and Pine events survived, but not in the form Amanda had imagined. She lost the corporate and luxury clients who had trusted her with private information. She sold her office lease, reduced her staff, and began taking smaller events under another company's supervision. She once wanted to enter her marriage as the woman who delivered $50 million in new assets. She left it with no equity, no executive title, and no control over the story people told about her. My mother resigned from every community position she still held. She told relatives that I had allowed lawyers to tear the family apart. I did not correct her at family gatherings because I stopped attending them. My father moved into a smaller apartment several months after the cottage was sold. He and Beverly did not divorce immediately, but they no longer lived together. He calls me once every few weeks. Our conversations remain brief. I have not restored the relationship we had before the wedding because that relationship depended on my willingness to accept his silence as kindness. He has never asked me for money. That matters, although it does not erase what happened. At TraceGrid, the Independent Financial Education Program became permanent. Employees can learn how advisory fees work, how to verify credentials, and how to recognize artificial deadlines. The company does not select one advisor or tell anyone how to use their money. The 7 employees who signed received their payouts without Harbor Ridge controlling them. Carla paid off her mortgage. Nathan retired 6 months later and sent me a photograph from a fishing trip with his grandson. Others invested, started businesses, funded college accounts, or simply left the money untouched until they felt ready. I once believed protecting people meant building a flawless system around them. The wedding taught me that a system cannot help anyone who does not know how to use it. My mistake was not trusting my family. It was assuming intelligence and good intentions would fill the silence I had left behind. I corrected that mistake. The blue dress is still in my closet. I kept it because it reminds me that I did not need a different outfit, a larger fortune, or my family's permission to walk back through those doors. They had invited the cameras, arranged the contracts, and prepared the story they wanted the world to believe. All I did was return before midnight and tell the truth. When your family uses your name, money, or reputation without permission, staying silent does not keep the peace. It gives them more room to continue. You should set clear boundaries, document important conversations, and verify every agreement before anyone acts for you. Protecting people does not mean paying for the You can admit your own mistakes, correct them, and still refuse to rescue those who betrayed your trust. Real wisdom is not avoiding conflict at any cost. It is knowing when to speak, when to act, and when to let consequences teach the lesson.